Welcome to the NAP Exam Prep Podcast, a focused 6-week series designed to support you preparing for the National Association of Parliamentarians exam. I am Dr. Lisa Burton, and each week we have covered key governance concepts, procedures, and foundational knowledge you will need to approach the exam with clarity and confidence. This podcast is educational, intentional, and time-bound, created to help you study smarter, understand the why behind the rules, strengthen your overall governance knowledge. Whether you're testing for the first time or just refreshing your understanding, you're in the right place. So let's get started. This is episode 6, and we're looking at chapter 11. So some key reminders. The information presented is based on Robert's Rules of Order. If you see the blue gavel, it could be important for the exam. A quiz is actually in the description box to help you review. Please, if you've been following along for the last 6 weeks, send in your application to take the exam. Once you've completed and passed your exam, please let me know via email at ljbforphylacter@gmail.com. So here's my disclaimer. So some key concepts in this chapter deal with point of order, point of information, and how to appeal decisions made by the chair. And we want to make sure we can speak to each of these with clarity. So point of order. It calls the attention of the chair to a potential breach of parliamentary procedure. It can be used if the chair makes a decision that conflicts with Robert's Rules of Order. They allowed a motion out of order. They disregarded a motion that should have been considered, etc. The chair decides whether to accept or reject your point. If you disagree with the decision, you can appeal the decision of the chair. The chair then has to explain their ruling, and then the group can then debate whether or not to sustain the chair's ruling and votes to sustain or overrule the chair. Now, point of order is a motion that is used whenever a member thinks that the rules of the assembly are being violated, and the member wants to call upon the chair for a ruling and an enforcement of the regular rules. So point of order is when we have a breach of the rules. It's always in order when another person has the floor. Even interrupting a person speaking, or if they're reading the point of report, if the point generally requires attention at such a time. Does not require a second. There's no debate. But with the chair's consent, a member may be permitted to explain their point of order, or if a member is interested, they may want to hear the explanation for the point of order. You cannot amend a point of order. Point of order is ruled upon by the chair. Only time that you can take a vote on point of order if the chair is in doubt or the chair's ruling is appealed. But most of the time, point of order, the chair takes care of it. Now, if you're the presiding officer, you can agree with the maker of the point of order, and then you basically say, well taken, and then take the corrective action. But the presiding officer can also disagree with the maker of the point of order and rule the point of order not well taken. The officer may refer the point of order to the assembly to make a decision. The assembly's decision cannot be appealed. So this third point is allowing the assembly basically to vote on if the point of order is taken well or not taken well. That decision cannot be appealed. We just move forward. So how does this work? If you notice a breach of order, you would then rise and without waiting for recognition, this is one of the few times in Robert's Rules of Order that recognition is not needed. So you rise and immediately address the chair and state one of the following. When you rise, you say, I rise to a point of order. You can just say point of order. In cases of transgression of the rules of debate, Mr. President, I call the gentleman to order. And then at that point, if you say any one of those three, anyone who's speaking must sit down. Now, with this point of order, please be careful. A lot of people confuse this with another motion. You must have had a breach in order. So make sure that there was actually a breach before you just say stand and say point of order. After everyone sits down, the chair asks the member to state his point or what words in debate are objective to. The member should then state his point or objection, resume their seat, and then the chair will rule whether the point of order is well taken or is not well taken, stating briefly the chair's reason. This chair's ruling and the reasons are entered in the minutes. Now, there is a timeliness requirement for this point of order. The general rule is that if the point of order is raised, it has to be raised promptly at the time of the breach. So if the breach happens and nobody saw it, you can't go back for that point of order. It has to be promptly at the time of the breach. A member may, with the chair's sufferance, reserve point of order. If the member is unsure and wants to hear what a maker has to say on behalf of a motion. So a member can rise and say, I'm not sure, but I need to hear everything that has happened before they go forward with their point of order. After they've heard it, they can choose to insist on the point of order, or they just basically sit down. Now, do you have any questions? If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box, and I will make sure to come back and answer them for you. Or as always, you can send an email to ljb for phylacter@gmail.com. Now, we just talked about point of order. Point of order is when there's a breach of the rules. This one, pointed information, is when you just need information or clarification to help make a decision on another motion. Like asking how much the chapter budgeted for the given event, who can attend proposed event, etc. For this one, you rise from your seat, but you have to be acknowledged by the chair. So a lot of people confuse point of order and point of information. Point of information, I just need clarity. Point of order, there was a breach in the rules and we need to get back in order. So that's when you would use that one. Now, this presiding officer, they're making sure the meeting gets from A to B. Decisions are being made. The assembly delegates to the presiding officer authority and duty to make necessary rulings on questions of parliamentary law. Any two members have the right to appeal the chair's decision on such a question. One member makes or takes the appeal, another seconds it, thereby taking the decision from the chair and vesting it in the assembly for the final decision. So there was some decision that the chair had to make, could have been on point of order, something that happened during the meeting, and members did not agree. This is where you would use an appeal. Now, members have no right to criticize a ruling of the chair unless they appeal from the chair's decision. So this is criticizing the chair. It's appealing the decision because it just wasn't agreeable. Two different things. So, to appeal the decision of the chair, it is in order when another has the floor. You must have a second. It is debatable unless it relates to decorum or transgression of the rules of speaking, relates to the priority of business, or it's made when an undebatable question is immediately pending or involved in the appeal. Now, you cannot amend this appeal. A majority or a tie vote sustains the decision of the chair on the principle that the chair's decision stands until reversed by a majority. If the chair is a voting member, he can vote to create a tie, thus sustaining his decision. So if an appeal is to be made, it must be made at the time of the chair's ruling. If any debate or business has intervened or basically gone on, it is too late to appeal. So exceptions to the right to appeal. An appeal may be applied to any ruling by the presiding officer, except that there is no appeal from the chair's ruling on a point of order if another appeal is pending, though it may be brought up later by another motion. When the chair rules on a question about which there cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions, an appeal will be dilatory and is not allowed. So how do we handle an appeal? It's a 6-step process on appealing the decision of the chair. The member makes the appeal. Recognition is not necessary, but it has to have a second. The chair states the question at issue, and the chair, this is one of the few times that the chair can state his reasons for the decision. And this can go now into debate, if permitted. So what happens in debate? The member speaks only once. The chair can speak twice during this debate time. So the chair will state his reason. That is one time they have spoken. The person who has made the appeal will speak. The chair can then speak a second time after the debate is finished. After that, the chair puts the question to a vote. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? And that's how it should be said by the chair. The vote is taken so that an affirmative vote, a yes vote, is in favor of sustaining the chair's decision. So you're keeping the decision of the chair. So make sure all of your votes are usually in a positive tone and not a negative one so people understand. So when you say, shall the decision of the chair be sustained, that is saying, when you vote yes, yes, the chair's decision stays. The result is then announced and business continues based upon the decision on the appeal. If you have any questions about how this appeal is used, put them in the description box below, or as always, send me an email at ljb4phylacter@gmail.com. Now we're almost wrapping up this session. Our next is talk about the motion to suspend the rules. Now there's certain situations that call for temporarily suspending a rule to accomplish the needs of society, and the rule may be suspended. Notice that this says rules. So remember we talked about standing rules, special rules. This does not say bylaws. This does not say constitution. This is talking about rules. And we've talked about standing rules and special rules. So how does this work? The maker of the motion must obtain the floor. It has to have a second. There's no debate except for a brief explanation of the reason of the motion. You cannot amend it. So the vote, you need a 2/3 vote is required. rules of order as established by the society, and then rules of order in the parliamentary authority. A majority vote is all that is required if the standing rules that refer to ordinary matters at the meeting, including convention standing rules, these rules may only be suspended for the current session. So depending on the type of rule that you're suspending, you either need a 2/3 or majority vote. The rules can be suspended by unanimous consent when they're obviously not controversial and may be suspended by a member asking for this without a formal motion and vote. And then we have parliamentary inquiry, which is a little very different than point of order, different than point of information. Parliamentary inquiry is in order when another has the floor and if it requires immediate attention. You do not need a second. There is no debate, but you can have a brief explanation. You do not amend, and there's no vote taken. So how does this work? During a meeting, Jemiah moved that the association provide a weekly newsletter to its members. After the motion was stated by the chair, Ellis spoke against the motion, stating, "Newsletters cause too many distractions." Ellis was interrupted by Tracy calling out parliamentary inquiry, Madam President. The chair recognized Tracy to speak. Tracy stated, "Doesn't the motion require a second?" The chair thinks all motions require a second. However, as debate has begun, the purpose of a second is achieved. The chair asks you are now the parliamentarian, if her response is correct. So basically, debate, if you notice, read for what it says. Motion was placed. Then they went quickly into debate. Tracy called out parliamentary inquiry because she didn't hear a second. What is your response? So, yes, the chair's response is correct. Since debate on the question had begun, the lack of a second was immaterial, but Tracy was also correct to make that inquiry. Now, in this situation, you could have did a couple of things, but parliamentary inquiry worked because she just wanted to make sure we were following things correctly. Here's another situation. In the same meeting, that the association provide a weekly newsletter to its members is the pending motion. Ellis concludes his debate. Jackie, after recognition, moves to limit debate to 3 speeches per side. The motion to limit debate is stated by the chair. Tracy immediately calls out parliamentary inquiry, Madam President. The chair is visibly troubled by Tracy's actions since the motion to limit debate is not debatable. The chair asks you, the parliamentarian, is Tracy allowed to interrupt the proceedings? And make sure you're reading situation B for as it is. Not going back to situation A. Look at straight situation B. As the parliamentarian, is Tracy allowed to interrupt these proceedings based on the situation? Is yes. It's just a parliamentary inquiry is appropriate and it can interrupt the speaker if it requires immediate attention. Tracy could give a brief explanation regarding his reason for making the inquiry. The chair response is the member will state the inquiry. The chair should be careful that Tracy does not debate the motion to limit debate, but only is asking a procedural question. So for parliamentary inquiry, we're making sure procedure is being followed, which is totally different than point of order, where a breach happened right then and there. Parliamentary inquiry, you're just trying to make sure, okay, we are following things, and they're good. If you have any questions about parliamentary inquiry, you can always put them in the chat below, or, like I've said, send me an email at ljbforphylacter@gmail.com. So in this session, or these sessions, we have talked about a lot of motions. And this is an important, I would say, slide for you to keep as you're going through. Maybe you want to become a parliamentarian or you're a presiding officer. It kind of gives you, for each different motion that we put down, whether it can be debated, whether it can be amended, the type of vote that you need. And what I would really suggest, if you're looking at the different types of votes, if you look at them, there are 3 that need a 2/3 vote. So to close debate, using previous question, to limit or extend debate, 2/3, suspend the rules of order, needs 2/3. Most of all the other votes, it is a majority. The vote for division of the assembly, you can see that one is totally different. It's just by a single member. Now the ones with the star, amend something previously adopted. And then also, make sure I'm looking at it correctly, to refer or commit to a committee. The star just shows you if a majority vote or 2/3 with notice. So, in a meeting previous, someone said, I want to refer this to a committee. But if there was no notice for the 2 that are starred, it has the majority of the entire membership has to be able to vote, or you have to have enough votes. So if you have 80 members and you didn't give notice, the majority of that 80 has to be able to vote on whether those 2 different motions are available. Now, we've looked at this staircase before, taking care of our motions, and based on what we have spoken about, at any time during any one of these motions, point of order, parliamentary inquiry can happen. After each ruling of the chair, depending on, you can make an appeal. But remember, an appeal has to happen immediately. Point of order happens immediately after that breach. Do not wait. In a parliamentary inquiry, you can almost interrupt at any time. You're just questioning procedure. Questioning procedure of what's happening in a meeting. So that kind of ends our study of Robert's Rules of Order in brief, 3rd edition. Couple of test taking tips for you. Remember that when taking the exam, you are not looking for the best answer, even though that is a typical direction given when you take multiple choice tests. For this exam, only one answer is right. There will at least be one reason why the others are not correct. The best strategy, find things that are wrong with the other answers and select the one that does not have these problems. The biggest thing I can say to you, answer the question that is being asked. Don't answer a question that's in your head that is not on the test. I know some of us who are going through this series, we have been in meetings where parliamentary authority was being followed, and we start reading things and we start interjecting our situations. Focus on the question at hand. Don't add anything extra. Don't add speculations about any other information. But at the same time, do not leave out things that are asked for. If a question writer puts something in the stem of the question, it is probably because you need that information to get the correct answer. Always answer the question that is written. So I want to thank you if you have followed along from episode 1 to episode 6. You have done the work. I say trust your preparation. If you've used the study guides and gone through and filled out all the definitions, you have taken the quizzes that have been provided, I say you are ready. If you have made it here, you basically also meant you've read that book, you are ready to take that exam. So go ahead to parliamentarians.org, and I'll make sure it's in the description box. Fill out the application, take the exam. Now, if you need some more assurance, focus on the areas that you don't feel clear about. Make sure you are studying with confidence and intention. And I think you'll get past this basic part of the exam. When you pass, you'll be a member of the National Association of Parliamentarians. And then I think you can start studying the next step, which this exam is to get you through meetings from A to B. The next step after this basic exam would be becoming a registered parliamentarian, which you would have to actually read the 12th edition, which is totally different. But if you're not ready for that, that is okay. Learning the basics is important. So I do want to thank you once again for being here for these 6 weeks. This will be the last episode posted here on Monday. Hope that you subscribed, liked, and you shared. These episodes will be available until July 20th, 2026. After that, I will make them available if someone asks for them. So with that, I am glad to have been your facilitator. So now I say go for it and all the best on your exam.